Ready. All right.
Everyone. Thank you so much. I drew water from a well today because I was thirsty. And that well's name was Ida. And her waters were the bright hues of Langston with Zora's essence right beside it. Her Hurston pulled out first in the line of funeral cars after the death of what existed. I sipped Ida's well water from Frederick's Douglas, just like he taught himself how to read. And then I made toast, and I drowned it with the sweetness of low-rank Hansberry jam, while using Morrison's code to signal my needs and listening to Tony Tones. It's my anniversary. I finally realized why I was so thirsty for Ida's well water. It's because I had hiked all the way to see Angelo's masterpiece, Maya's art set apart from the ordinary. And then I set sail for Cuba to sip tea with the one and only Asada. Shakur, she's sure of her grandmother's dreams, just as sure as Nikki belongs with Giovanni as she rides her bicycle towards love forms. Love isn't blind and it doesn't scorn. I learned that lesson after being blessed with falling from Lucille's cliff. Dunn's freedom song for my freedom ride, all the way to the brook of Wyndham. Because I still needed to quench this thirst. Or maybe I needed to see my reflection in her waters, just to discover the well within myself. You see, I am Ida B. Wells, Langston Hughes, Thornell Hurston. Their legacy is in my book. I am Frederick Douglass, Lorraine Hansberry, Toni Morrison, accepting the contrary. I am Maya Angelou, Asada Shakur, Nikki Giovanni. The revolution is pure. I am Lucille Clifton and Gwendolyn Brooks. Their promise was in writing, and my future is sure causing havoc as a prodigy, and my circle is pumping it out of me because my mob is deep, just like I as well. And I drew water from it because I was thirsty. Y'all give yourself some snaps for being here today. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. My name is Jian Jones, Professor Jones. I am a professor within the School of Allied Health Sciences, Division of Occupational Therapy, where occupational therapy, does anyone know what occupational therapy is? Oh. Oh, I know at least two people in here that should raise their hand on what occupational therapy is. Thank you very much. Occupational therapy helps with the skills of doing. So everything that you do to take care of yourself is what occupational therapists will assist you with. Now, in a very vulnerable position, an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, a speech language pathologist may come in to assist. But today, we are talking about how to deconstruct shame and use vulnerability as a strength. Okay, so welcome to the very first Black History Month Masterclass Lecture Series, sponsored by Honey Pot and Target, with HBCUs on the highest of 7 hills at Florida A&M University. Staff. Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We are going to reclaim or learn how to reclaim our wellness. All right. So in getting started, Honey Pot and Target has a really nice message for us. Okay. While Black humans have been paramount in shaping self-care in the wellness space, we, as humans, have been removed from the story. From centuries of oppression, Black humans have become distanced from our roots of wellness, often becoming caretakers rather than the one who receives the care. An integral part of empowering our community to reclaim wellness is providing our community with the education and tools to connect to self, mind, body, and soul. So before we get into the traditional definition of vulnerability, I would like for everyone to scan the QR link, the QR code, or you can type in the link, menti.com, and use 2 words to describe vulnerability. 2 words to describe vulnerability. Let me know if my big head is in the way. It's really not that big. It's peanut. Welcome. I'm going to give us about 2 more minutes. Not really, about a minute, 60 seconds. So we are scanning the QR code and using 2 words to describe vulnerability. 2 words to describe vulnerability. Okay. Okay. So we have open, honest, truth, freedom, trusting, exposed. Okay, come on, exposed. Unguarded, emotional, resilient, shy, afraid, authentic. Yes. Trustworthiness, strength, expression, embarrassed. Within this mindful hip hop scholar space, I use mindfulness. Does anyone know what mindfulness is? This is a discussion. Thank you. I say this is a discussion, y'all. I need y'all to talk back to me. Okay, please talk back to me. Back talk. Talk back. Oh, I think we have one of those people there. Ma'am, do you mind sharing what mindfulness is? Absolutely, without judgment. So that means whatever you're feeling in that present moment, you don't judge that feeling, process that feeling, so that you know what to do next, right? So this is how we live our best lives, because we're in the present moment versus putting up this shield to hide who we are because we're worried about the next person, worrying about us being in our feelings. Okay, so that's something that we're going to break down and deconstruct today. All right. So I'm going to say give you some snaps if you have listened to still over it. Okay. And you guys know who this is. This is This is Summer Walker. All right. So right now we're going to break down the strong Black woman trope. That's it. That means explaining what it means to be a strong Black woman. What does that mean? What does that look like? Go ahead.
I think sometimes we take on too much of the carry, but we put up this front saying that accomplishment, even though we don't really want to do it.
Ma'am?
Prioritizing our labor.
Snaps. I think your hand was up too. The backbone. Okay. So would we call that being unloyal? Because that's one of the track songs on Still Over It. Would we call that being unloyal to who we are? Authentically?
Yeah.
Wow, let's talk about that. Right. Okay. Right. Anyone else? Yes. Say that again.
You treat yourself of your own feelings, knowing that it hurts me.
Yeah, I like that. What about when it was modeled for you to be a strong Black woman? Let's break that down. What does that look like? Has anyone, let's do this. Snap if you have had a model of a strong Black woman. Okay. And for a fellow here, snap or clap if you have seen or if you are related to a strong Black woman. Okay, please share some characteristics of these strong Black women and what they have or what they portray presently. Independent, lonely. Underline exclamation point. Y'all, she said lonely. Anyone else? Yes.
A sacrifice.
Sacrifice, a sacrificial lady. All right, give me some more. Yes, ma'am. Of course you do.
What being a strong woman looks like that doesn't involve you, labor, things like that. And so my definition of strong Black woman is based on wisdom, that intuition, power, which are all very powerful things,
Right.
But a lot of times, strong Black women, we blend in a lot of things that aren't necessarily responsive, but that's been our story. Okay. Our strength has been a beautiful thing in a beautiful way, but it also has to be there to protect us, something like a callus. And so it develops a heart that does manifest only in other things, but it doesn't have to be. And you're at the point of defining what something looks like that doesn't incorporate everything. You have to decimate fatigued and worn out.
Yes, ma'am. So those positive attributes were those characteristics that were modeled for you from a strong woman? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
The trope that we know, I don't know that on a personal. I know it because you see things in the media or you're hearing what other people say, but in my immediate sphere and my building and my family, it wasn't attached to suffering. It was attached to family building and prosperity and patience, you know.
And we need more of that. That's the purpose of this lecture. That's the purpose of the masterclass lecture series, specifically this topic on vulnerability and shame, so that we can have more of those characteristics portrayed by Black women already, right? Okay, so emotional restraint. Snaps, if you practice that on the daily. I'm gonna say that. Okay. And what did you say? Not on purpose. What does that mean? Explain that.
Oh, like sometimes you feel like you can't or be vulnerable because like people don't want to see Black women.
Okay. And so you feel silenced?
Yeah.
So you feel silenced?
Yeah.
Have you ever attempted to explain yourself?
Definitely.
And tell us about your experience.
Sometimes it's just dismissed. It's dismissed a lot because like the media.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we say something, but it's not, you don't really feel like that. That's not what it is.
Yeah.
Check now. Okay. And so again, silence. It makes us not want to share. How many of you, or raise your hand and share if you continue to speak and attempt to be vulnerable, even though you feel like you're not listening to? Okay. 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 I know for me, I shut down. If I attempt about 3 times and you're still not hearing me, there's a book called Crucial Conversations. It tells you about how to have conversations that are difficult in the workplace and relationships with family members. And I attempt 3 times. After that 3rd time, I go into a shell, and I may not distance myself from the individual completely, but I do distance myself away. And then I feel shameful, or I feel shame because I'm no longer being my authentic self, because I've tried 3 times and it wasn't successful. And I feel like that happens within our community because we attempt to communicate so much and we're not heard. And so we shut down or we lash out. We lash out via behavior. So independence, we talked about independence. Someone said independent has a characteristic of a strong Black woman. What does this look like? Not asking for help. That's me. Friends have to, that's you too.
Yeah.
I see you and me. Friends, partner, family members have to tell me Jian, accept my help. I am here. Why do you want to do everything by yourself? And I'm like, because you have things to do as well. And I can get it all done. It's a lot harder for me to tell you to do X, Y, and Z when I can just do it myself when I only have 24 hours a day. And all 24 I cannot use because I'm sleeping from some of those. So explain some of your characteristics in terms of being independent. And speak louder so that the audience, not the audience on Zoom can hear you.
I didn't want to ask that. I know earlier we brought up the point of what behavior of a strong woman was modeled to us. And I can honestly say all the women in my life have been wildly independent. They don't ask anyone for help. Usually it's done before anyone can even ask. And definitely I carried that into like my college experience, not speaking up when I need the help or getting the help when I need the help or waiting until the last possible moment because you think you can handle everything by yourself. And I think that like you think it's independence, but really it's like a response to something you not feeling like you can get the help that you need.
It's a maladaptive behavior. That's what it is, ma'am.
And I definitely think that some people are independent by nature, they're naturally self-starters and stuff like that, but a lot of the independence is coming from, it's a trauma response to being let down by people depending on you something for it. So, people just don't come out in the world independent unless you're a toddler and you do everything by yourself, right? But we come out codependent, but things happen that cause us to be less communal and less dependent and with each other. And a lot of people don't talk about, they talk about like strong Black women, not only saying there's a response to something, it's responding to something, not just people just come out mad, angry, don't want no help, they're upset, lashing out, withdrawn or whatever. It's from being repeatedly being let down into where you're just like, I don't need to do this job, I can do it. Like, that whole I can do that by myself kind of situation.
Where you witness those strong Black women, you're being let down. You're like, okay, so I have to do this myself. And then mama or auntie tells you, this is what you have to do. You have to have that bank account on the side, even though you're married, just in case something happens. Okay. Okay. So that independent piece. And then caretaking. Whew, this is a lot of the muling. Snap if you feel like you have to take care of people. Okay, what does that look like? And please don't think that you're talking too much because again, it's a discussion. What does it look like? Okay. Oh, yes. See, I just did it. Yes.
Kind of piggybacking off of what they said, but I'm gonna go with doing sometimes the emotional labor for other people. I come from a big family, so I feel like I do a lot of that.
What's your name?
Ashley.
Ashley, I need to talk to you about something. I'm having a rough day. There's a lot going on, and I need to talk to you.
Okay.
See, yeah. And you may have your own things going on, and you're about to go into class and take a test, but you feel obligated, the obligation to listen.
It's also our physical caretaker, the financial caretaker, the emotional caretaker. So we're everything.
And have been for a very long time. So let's go back in history. And I know a historian is here presently. What does this look like? How did this construct come to be? The strong Black woman being having emotional restraint, independence, and caretaking. Where did that come from? Yes, sir.
Thank you for the knowledge on my hand. I heard a poem that said that women are at the bottom of the totem pole because they're responsible for holding up America. So you think about the foundation of America, and black women had to breastfeed their master's kids, take care of their kids, take their own kids. And that's been a common like theme throughout since black women were brought into these lands. And now in 2022, black women got to outsource their kids and raise other kids, raise other people's responsibilities. It's almost like I was trying to say that black women, and strong black women are almost synonymous. This is the role that black women have to onset of America.
So you're basically saying black women are strong black women, period.
I can't differentiate between just based off, seeing my mom did everything. And I see me have this ability that they capable of saying, I think you got it, let me go to my life. Women can't do it, but they can't do it by default.
When you said that you saw your mom do everything, explain that. What did that look like?
Financially take care of it. Come home after work a 12-hour shift, coming to cook food, going helping us with homework. Everything that a two-person household should do. My mom was solo by herself. And so many women are responsible for two people household responsibility by themselves. And it's unfortunate that men have to have the freedom to hide and you got it.
Okay. So, yes, ma'am.
I think a lot of it came from a lot of the overt assault on the men. Everything from the military and then overseas, coming back on drugs, PTSD, drug trade, being pulled out, into the society because they're trying to provide or do whatever, being in prison. All of those major things have led to us having to do everything else because they're either in another country fighting war that they don't really belong in. They're dealing with a lot of mental and health and drug issues, being in the streets, being arrested, being incarcerated. All those things have kind of just left us, out here to wonder by ourselves. And, there's a whole other conversation that isn't allowed, what's happening on the male side of things. And there's a lot of conversation about there. There's a conversation about what not having fathers in the home does to children. We're going to talk a lot about what consistent, a consistent positive male presence, what that does when it's not there for women. And so that's why I appreciate the conversation because a lot of those people are very hard for black women to be vulnerable because sometimes it's unsafe for us to be vulnerable. It's unsafe.
Yes.
You can die in certain situations, in certain environments.
Right. So can we actually implement transformative health in order to practice more vulnerability? Or do you think that's something that okay, so we can't do that. Okay. And I want to go back to what
There's nothing we've been through that we can't do.
right. I know. Okay, so we're not gonna piggyback, but we can continue.
So, what you just said about black women being ostracized for being vulnerable. I was watching a documentary about Russell Simmons, and these women, when they spoke up, it's like their lives were ruined, their careers were snatched away. You can't speak up against powerful men about, I'm thinking about R. Kelly. You speak up against R. Kelly, your life is ruined. It's not going to happen. When we speak up against protecting our own bodies, and society is like, ain't no way he did that. Automatically, automatically, when you try to ruin this man's life, this man is a hip-hop father, hip-hop godfather, you try to ruin his life.
No, keep on.
It's just, it is unfortunate that there is no safe space. The only safe space you can come to is amongst other victims. But when you speak out, and want to voice heard is kind of like what Colin Kaepernick, imagine what, Colin Kaepernick did, to the NFL. That's what a lot of women go through and get raped. They can't get jobs. They can't get back to the NFL. They can't, I'm putting my livelihood on the line and speaking up against my faith.
Going back to the documentary that he's speaking of is On the Record with Drew Dixon. And she was an A&R for Def Jam first and then Arista. And so she actually just left the field or the profession because it was too much for her. And she said that she did not want to be ostracized by coming forward. But what helped her to come forward was when other women came out. And she heard, and I'm not saying that anyone did anything, just stating what I saw in the documentary, when she heard Russell Simmons say, that's not true. And she heard him say that for another woman and another woman. She's like, no, I cannot allow them to go out there alone. So with that whole alone piece, when we stick together, we can have transformative health and or practice vulnerability and break down this construct of shame around vulnerability and feel safe. This is a good conversation. Okay, so the Superwoman Schema. Not sure why that did that, but what does that mean? What does that look like? Yes, I have the hot girl Meg up there, and that's for a reason. But when you see Superwoman, what does that mean to you versus strong Black woman? Go ahead.
I think that society sees it as synonymous. They think that, you think I can hear me now?
Yeah, just come closer. When we're at like a town hall, you have to come down to the mic. Let's do that,
Okay.
please.
So I feel like society sees Superwoman and the strong Black woman as synonymous, meaning they feel like Black women can take anything that's thrown at them and they're invincible. And I think there's a big danger in that. Like when Mr. Yerrick said that he sees strong Black women and Black women as synonymous. It was beautiful, but it was also a very bold and dangerous statement. Because like with that, we feel the pressure from everyone else to be that. And then that forces us to like take on independence when it's not okay for us, or to restrain our emotions, so on and so on.
Thank you. So we feel obligated to be the bottom of the totem pole.
Yes.
We feel obligated. It's like, if we don't do it, who else is going to do it? We have to do this. We absolutely have to do this. So when you see Megan Thee Stallion, how does she present as a superwoman? Confident.
Balancing her career and school.
Well, she graduated. Okay, what else? Repeat the question. Oh, she said, balancing career and going to college.
A lot of personal issues. Trying to be the woman of her dreams at the same time, and she's still being criticized, even though like she's a successful woman. There's still power to kick at her about that, like still like bothers her. She doesn't put on the front, like it doesn't bother her.
Okay.
And then when she breaks down and cries, people are surprised. And like, this is not the Megan you've seen. Being vulnerable, but then it's like there's two sides to everyone. Like there's one that isn't show in public and one in private, but I feel like celebrities, they also humans too, so they should be able to be vulnerable, and we should be able to accept that, because that's what we as regular people will want someone to do. So I feel like we should show the same grace and empathy to people like that, especially Black people, because we are considered at the bottom of the totem pole, because we're always trying to take care of other people and like be a strong image for other people of the world, and no one like take care of us.
It's like you always have to be on.
Yeah.
For Megan Thee Stallion, her character is the hot girl. Right, I would say that's her occupation, because I'm an occupational therapist, just to, you know, put a play on it. But when she is being vulnerable, like when that incident happened when she was shot, or when she broke up with a boyfriend potentially, or got her a boyfriend. In the comments, it said, what happened to Hot Girl Summer? And in my mind, I'm like, you can't be a hot girl and be in a relationship. What? You had your hand up? And so she lost her mother and her grandmother. Same year. She wasn't just in school and balancing her career, but she was also going through grief, is what Ms. Kayla said. But people still, I'm gonna say we, her supporters still expected her to show up with the Meg knees and present this character. And so she had to put out a whole album to let us know, look, I'm human, but y'all can still get it. Yes, ma'am.
Not only that, but I feel like not only was she basically like still overcoming a lot of the tragedies that happened in her life, but she was also, as you said, like expected by us to continue to be the hot girl. And so for a lot of us, she became like this image of course, a strong Black woman, but also Superwoman.
Right.
Because it's like, wow, Meg has really been through a lot and she's still overcoming it, and she's still being who we were first introduced to. Like, while also growing, like she's growing with us, but she's also like leading us. I feel like that's like, I don't know, that's kind of she kind of represents, she's a good example of a strong Black woman and of that Superwoman schema as well.
Right. So I'm gonna say this, you know, when there's a matriarch in the family and something happens to the matriarch, someone else rises to the occasion. That's what we need to do in order for vulnerability to work and for us to not be shameful. Whenever something happens, we need to rise to the occasion without being the mule, without fully taking on everyone else, right? We need to prioritize. But when one matriarch falls or one superwoman isn't so super because she's resting or she's grieving, someone else needs to step up. Okay. 5 elements. Feeling an obligation to present an image of strength, which you guys have already described. Suppressing emotions. So when she displayed her emotions, she was criticized on social media. And then helping others. I'm pretty sure Megan Stallion takes care of a lot of people in her family. A lot of people in her family. Then resistance to being vulnerable. Always talking about how I have this is what I can do. This is how much better I am than you, and you can't see me. When I can't see, I have eyes, and I'm looking at you right now. Like, you know, we have the same emotions. So what are some ways that we can actually, let me say the last one, and then a drive to succeed despite limited resources. Someone already said balancing her career and going to college. Now, she didn't have limited resources after a certain point, but before she was in school and probably hustling to get a mixtape done, trying to go to the studio to record, trying to promote this mixtape. You know, what happened with the situation where Jay-Z came in and kind of saved her with Roc Nation because the label before wasn't giving her her due diligence. But pretty sure she was having a hard time prior to the Meg that we know today. So what are some ways that we can diminish these 5 elements that we implement every single day?
All right, saying no.
Saying no.
The complete saying.
It's no. And somebody say period. Here.
I think it'll be a great idea. Right now, I'm getting sauce. I think it'll be a great idea. I think it'll be a great idea I think it'd be a great idea to bring these kind of conversations with men, because right now, you know, I'm getting the sauce. A lot of men are ignorant of the things that you're talking about. And we need to, with our limited resources and just us being ex-wives, XX chromosomes, they on a different level. And we need to be able to get the insight on why women have to be so strong. Why as a man, there's a symbiotic relationship between men and women. And if that symbiotic relationship is not balanced, that's what's the cause of women having to be superwomen. So we need to close the gap, bridge the gap between, and educate men on the responsibilities of being a strong Black woman and how our role in a relationship can offset y'all being, this such a strong Black woman. We're gonna be it anyway, but it's up to us to kind of offset that. You understand what I'm saying? Like, women shouldn't have to take on two home responsibilities by themselves. That should be a codependence there. And then if you bring us into those environments and into those conversations, I think it'll do a good job in closing the gap.
Back to what? As a hand. Go ahead.
Let me just say that, I don't think that particularly Black men and women are in a place to do that right now. Not yet, maybe soon, but not quite yet. It's really the responsibility of the men folk who are more sensitive to our needs and who listen better to take that to other men first. Prep them first, prep the other men folk first before we start. And second for women. Relationships with men who tend to listen more and not really respond, emotionally like it's men, should be kind of the translators and be, and get us more emotional and spiritually ready. A lot of us are very, very traumatized, very raw, very upset, rightfully so on both sides for very different reasons, essentially very pissed off at each other. And it's very hard to have objective conversations because somebody's going to start bringing in a personal situation where Jen DC got kids and he was doing this and this, and then it gets really messy very, very, very quickly, when really we just need a little bit more time of healing, of self-work before we can kind of constructively. This is why it's hard for us to have romantic or marriage type relationships, and why the divorce rate is so high. It's hard for us to even have a conversation, let alone try to build family and everything like that. Although I agree 100% with what my brother's saying, it's just, it may not be time right now. Ask me how I know. How do you know? Well, I hold these type of conversations all the time. I'm a media personality on a podcast called TT Talks. And TT be talking. People expand to women about a lot of things. And then I have a private group on Facebook, and every day I'll put up provocative conversations about things. And it usually starts off beautiful. And a few comments down and get because, and I usually I don't interfere a lot. I let unless people are being blatantly disrespectful, I will listen to what people are saying. But after a few years of doing this and a few years of having a group, I know we're not quite yet. I know a lot of people who are going to work on both sides. And I know I see where we can come together. It's just kind of an outlier at this point. We're not quite at that point, but I think that we're getting there. I think we're starting to realize that we actually do need each other. It doesn't even necessarily have to be in a romantic capacity. That's my brother. You know what I'm saying? It don't get, every guy that you cool with, that you drive with, they ain't gotta be your boo. That could be your brother for life. I have brothers for life. I don't want to marry them. I want to be with them, but I will sacrifice for them as they would do for me. And I don't think we have a lot of examples of what a healthy platonic situation is with men folk. And I know men struggle a lot with being friend zoned, and I'm confused. I'm like, why wouldn't you want to be friends with a woman? But that's a whole nother conversation for another day. But yeah.
Thank you. Because I want to ask the gentlemen that are here, why is it difficult to just stay in a friend zone with a woman? Because what happens is when that relationship doesn't work out, because the chemistry wasn't meant to turn into a romantic situation. And then that leads to shame because of heartbreak or it didn't work out. And now we don't want to be vulnerable anymore because we have been vulnerable in this space. And now I'm mad and I have to go and be my independent self, taking care of my kids by myself. I don't want anything to do with you, which is not the correct response. However, this conversation, it is in direct alignment with what we're speaking about today in terms of vulnerability and shame. So do I have any one of my men folk that want to actually say why is it difficult to just be in the friend zone with a woman that you may be attracted to or you have chemistry with?
I think it's just the dynamics of the relationship, right? So it's one of those things that, like if I hang out with my best friend and he's a male, if I'm out there at 11 o'clock, no question, female changes the dynamic. Because now I may, as a black male, turn into, well, it's nighttime. I have to make sure I'm in protective mode, right? Make sure she gets home, right? But at the same time, the optics are from outside, how can that look, right? Someone might say, oh, that's your friend, but 11:30 at night, you're always just alone, no one else. So the dynamic just kind of changes a little bit when you start with different sexes. That's how I just usually like to say it. When we start to mingle, we kind of, things come a little bit gray instead of being black and white, how we know about things. That's how I put it.
It's like the same time when it comes together, that little line in between is very difficult to keep two separate. They have to come together.
And also there's feelings. You know, people develop feelings and care for people. So when it gets to a point, perhaps one side or the other, not necessarily the female or the male, somebody just all of a sudden says, well, you know what? Maybe we can take this a different route. And you know, when you start off where it's just friends, doesn't mean agreement has to be that it's going to be a relationship.
Right.
So I think that's where it gets too real complicated between, you know, us males and the ladies. It becomes a situation of, I can be a friend in support of, hey, tell me a problem, you want me to listen, you want me to maybe provide a solution, you can do that. But when you start kicking it on a different level, it can kind of get a little bit complicated and cause some friction in relationships.
Now, according to the CDC, top 5 leading causes of death for Black women. Y'all guess? Stress is a part of it. What she just said was baby daddy, baby daddy, baby daddy. Okay. Heart attack, so heart disease. Yes, heart disease. What'd you say? So pregnancy is not within the top 5. Yes. Don't use your phone. Don't Google. She said cancer. So far we have heart disease, cancer, diabetes. Yes. Yes. No. Those are on the list, but not top 5. Alzheimer's disease. So within those 5, we have broken memories, broken heart, broken mind. Your memories and your mind are separate. I mean, they work together, but they're separate. Then we have the stress that leads to the diabetes as well as the diet, right? So when we take on too much because we don't want to, I want to say, feel the shame. We don't want to be vulnerable because it's not safe. Then it's breaking our heart, right? Alzheimer's is also related to, but there's a study. I don't have the title of the study right now, this moment, but there's a study that actually links the trauma of Black women to Alzheimer's disease, right? So if you think about the age group that has Alzheimer's, everything that they've been through each decade, from segregation to integration, right? Losing their male counterpart due to mass incarceration, death, drugs, what have you. By the time they reach a certain age, there's dementia and it rapidly moves forward. So we are legit killing ourselves because we don't feel safe in being vulnerable, but we also continue to take on too much. So it's time for us today, yesterday, and the day before to learn some action steps that we need to implement each day. Find your safe spaces. I'm not saying to be vulnerable in each and every space. Know where to be vulnerable and allow yourself to be vulnerable. Yes, ma'am. And remember to speak loud so those on Zoom can hear us.
Okay, so when you spoke about Alzheimer's, I have a personal experience. My grandma's 87 years old and she has Alzheimer's. And when you were like referring back to the time periods of the trauma that Black women have been through, I was thinking about my grandma's story. So my grandma's story is basically like she got married. She's a nice child, 13. She got married at 19. She got married to my granddad, who was an older Black male. He was like 11 years older than her. Already had 2 kids, and her and him ended up having 6 kids. One of them being my grandmother. But my grandma was going through a lot with segregation, like growing up in a poor family, and then her husband was not the best of husbands. You know, he had alcoholism problems. But like my grandma got a job, and he would take her money from her and go ask my aunt to go cash her check to give to him, and he would never offer anything. And it was just like she stayed because of her children, because he was a bad husband, but he was a decent father. And she didn't have nothing but a high school education. She didn't have nowhere to go. So it was just like when he was explaining them in their memories and everything that they went to, like now her brain is like fried. Like she don't really know where she is half the time. She thinks she's supposed to be one place in another time period. Like she thinks my mom should be like a kid. So she looks at me and she thinks I'm her mom. And it's like my mom's 56 years old. And it's just how the dynamics have changed for her. And I've seen how bad it has progressed to the point where it's just like, it's so frustrating to her that she doesn't even know, like, she knows her mind is gone, but she doesn't know. It's so frustrating because she doesn't know who people are. And I can see that even take a toll on her, like with her blood pressure and all that. It's like she already has diabetes on top of that. So it's just like all these dynamics that we're talking about just playing on her. And like when I look at her, like her trying to be so strong and trying to act like nothing phases her, like she's always like, I'm fine, but I know like all the dynamics that she's going through is really like tearing her apart.
Okay. So what she was saying for those on Zoom, she was just explaining the process of potentially why her grandmother acquired Alzheimer's and what her history looked like. Her grandmother is 87 years old. Okay, so she talked about her marriage, when she got married, and all the trauma, so PTSD. Right, so if we think about now, modern times, we are going through similar things, just different. Think about 2020. Think about 2020. I have some first responders in the room. As you can see, she has on everything from the hospital. Sis, are you tired? Yeah, because it's hard. So we have to allow ourselves space to rest, be ourselves, take off the armor so that we don't drive ourselves into sickness. Okay. All right, so deconstructing shame. Another Summer Walker song. Snap if you know the song. Yes. Okay. So in 2018, Summer Walker released an album, and on the album there was a track called Shame, right? So the song opens up with, in a perfect world, you're understanding. I'm not a perfect girl. I would drop my fears at the door. I would only bring myself and nothing more. So I want to elaborate on that, but I want you all to elaborate on it first. In terms of deconstructing shame, what does this mean?
Being happy with yourself. Being happy with yourself.
Being happy with yourself. Yes, ma'am.
I think it be like being able to be vulnerable and show your true self
without the fear of being judged or just feeling like you'll be attacked for feeling anything or just feeling nothing in it.
Back to that mindfulness, right? Back to mindfulness. Being in the present moment, feeling your feelings without judgment. Anyone else? What does this mean? Yes.
I think when she wrote it,
Before.
Exactly.
So that like when she wrote it, her definition of shame or like what she is ashamed about is
Not being perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's shame in not being perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. She is. So that the individuals on Zoom can hear and, interact as well.
Okay, so kind of going off of what she said, being scared of like not being perfect. Because I think sometimes you don't feel like you deserve to receive sympathy if you're not a certain image. Like you shouldn't have to be perfect to be vulnerable or to feel like you're worthy of expressing that. I think with Black women, we always think that we have to be like look a certain way or like get to a certain level before we can like really express ourselves or like let people hear what we have to say. Sometimes I don't think we value our voices enough because we don't think we're enough as who we are in the moment. We always think, oh, once I get here, then I'll be able to, that. So I think she's kind of saying, because even her highlighting she's not a perfect girl, that shouldn't be a thing because nobody's perfect. So in a perfect world, you would understand that I'm not perfect and understand I'm okay with that. And striving to be perfect shouldn't be a goal.
What's your major?
Sociology.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes.
The shame is baggage. Bags at the door. So if she's feeling the pressure to be a perfect girl and she realizes that she's not, she's carrying that around like a really heavy purse. So in a perfect world, she just walk in and just let herself be free. She can't. It's baggage.
Right. What happens when you sit down a really heavy purse? Like it's really because your shoulders hurting, your back is hurting. Think about a heavy book bag with a laptop, some books in it, your phone, food, water, everything. I would say everything. As soon as we put it down, that's such a relief. That's such a relief. So in deconstructing the shame, yes, dropping my baggage at the door, dropping imposter syndrome, because that's what you described. And saying, I am who I am. I'm going to be who I am. And if you love me for who I am, great. But if you don't, okay. I'm going to be okay. Because that's what I need to be strong for myself. All right, what are some ways or some action steps for us to deconstruct shame?
Self-awareness.
Self-awareness. She said self-awareness, y'all. Who else? Yeah. Relatability. Explain that. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. I'm Professor Jones, but I apologize.
Okay. Relatability, like spaces like this, how we're having these conversations and realizing that we're all going through the same thing. And understanding that like this experience that we're having, this human experience, this Black woman experience, like it's relatable.
Right.
So it's like you shouldn't feel ashamed of going through these feelings or these feelings that she was going through because we're all going through it.
All right. I like that. Relatability. Yes, Ms. Taylor. Acceptance. I like that. A good friend of mine who's present here today, I told her that someone told me something that I resonated with, and that quote was, the worst place to be is in your field. And she looked at me and said, I don't agree with that. The best place to be is in your field. Now, it was teacher talk here. It was about 4 years ago, 5 years ago. You don't remember that? I do not. We were at work. We were at hospital. Well, yeah. But I think, were you gonna add to that? No, I want you to add to it. Come on, add to it. Okay, so is there anything else that we can do to deconstruct shame and to exhibit vulnerability to provide that safe space for us to become stronger?
Okay, now, Okay, so, there's a few things. One, finding a quality therapist is really, 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 really important. And, you gotta treat finding a therapist like you treat moving to a new city and trying to find somebody to braid your hair. Okay? If you go in and she in there and she, talking on the phone and doing all of this stuff, you're not gonna go back, but that means you're gonna stop finding somebody to braid your hair. You're just gonna find another one. Yeah. And a lot of people will, they'll be like, well, I tried that, but I ain't like them. But that's fine. Find another one. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of, quality therapists. Not every therapist is gonna jive with you. That's anybody. And so you shouldn't come on with the expectation it's gonna be one and done. Talk to a couple of your friends, be like, hey, do you see somebody who you recommend? Give me some names of people. Get you a list of about 5, 10 people and treat it like an interview. And find out whoever it is that is gonna be for you, or if it's gonna be multiple people. If you have a competent mentor or something like that, definitely look into that. Tap into whatever your spiritual base is. And that's so many things for Black people. It's not just one thing. I've seen us do remarkable things as Christians, as Muslims, as atheists and agnostics, as African traditional religious folk, as people who don't give shit about no religion. They say love is their religion. All of that has been very beneficial to us with the right mind frame and support. I focus less on what it is and more on what the quality of it is. Because, you be a Christian or Muslim, whoever all day, but if your character ain't good, it don't really mean anything. It doesn't mean anything at all. And so I think us having a good spiritual base, having a good place to confide in, keeping journals, if that's your thing. It ain't my thing. I be trying, but right. But I didn't even take notes in college, so that's just a me thing. But I do know that for other people, it's extremely therapeutic for them to write, especially young people who were silenced a lot, who didn't have the chance to speak up, or if they did speak up, it was perceived as disrespect or talking back or being fast or being whatever. And so the shutdown happened. But for a lot of people, they found a lot of comfort in reading and writing. I saw some, Twitter isn't, but I like Twitter. But if there was something on Twitter, it's not a scientific thing, but going around about, somebody asked, if you were a child who read a lot, were you like really traumatized? That's a way for people to just dissociate. It's a way for you to escape. It's a way for you to, go into your imaginary place that is safe from the chaos, that's happening. Some people just bookworms, and somebody were pushed into being bookworms. That's the only place where they can be free. And so, and tapping into those things that make you feel free, even if your friends don't dig it. Even if your friends are not interested, if you like to get pottery, make some pottery. If you don't feel like, no, that's bad, that's boring, you're like, okay, well, I'll see y'all later, right? I'm going to my pottery class and do it just for you. It don't have to have anything else to do with anybody. There's a whole lot of stuff that I like. My friends don't like it. They be like, I'll see you later. And I be like, all right, bye. I'm gonna go, okay, right. Y'all go, what's that? There's fly. Like, okay, bye. Get up my fly, please. And then we'll come back and be friends. Everything, you don't have to do everything with everybody all the time. Sometimes you see something that belongs to you, that's just for you. My mama religiously went to a ceramics class. I get it now. But as a kid, I'm like, oh, y'all doing this stuff, bang stuff, that's boring or whatever. But I started to understand the meditative aspect that came along with creating, that came along with painting. And I was just like, what my mom did to decompress, So find whatever that is for you. We just need a lot more spaces where we're able to release the valve, that pressure valve, just to take the edge off so that we can be able to just continue on for one more day. But now we're at a point where we're not interested in just surviving anymore. We're trying to thrive now, and so that involves you creating strong boundaries about what it is that you want and what it is that you need out of people, out of life, out of situations. And also making sure that you're holding yourself to a standard that you're trying to hold other people to. You know, you can't expect people to not treat you when you treat people in a kind of way. It don't work like that, you know. So
Leisure activities that belong to you.
mentor or something to provide in journaling.
Okay. Relatability. Someone else said another one. Okay.
I'm gonna say, more on having emotional experiences and processing it.
Mindfulness. Yes. Yes.
What they both said. In my own personal life, I like to journal. And I feel like for me, I've learned the only way out is through. And I've learned the most about myself by actually acknowledging my emotions for what they are, studying them and calling myself out on my own BS sometimes, excuse my language, but I learned the most about myself by acknowledging my emotion for what it is and writing about it and being as authentic and honest with myself and that emotion. And it's kind of like David and Goliath, like facing my giant, like, okay, what is this? How am I going to get through this battle? And then once I'm done writing, it's like I can close my book and I'm like, it's done. So that's how I kind of feel about it.
So y'all know that gospel song, When I Got Over? It needs to be called When I Got Through. Based on what Alan here said, it needs to be When I Got Through. Anyone else on deconstructing change? Yes.
Pretty much off of
Ashley.
what Ashley just said, I think changing our responses to how we look at change kind of help with that, because not everything, I think sometimes we look at things being painful and just an experience, a learning journey. It's not necessarily something bad. So just changing our responses to that and not looking at it as a negative thing, but
So discovery, when going through a certain situation, I have this quote that I go by. We discover who we are when we experience who we are not. So if we don't go through that moment, we won't find out or discover who we truly are. Yes, ma'am.
I was also gonna say, transparent wall, so that means you're not in survival mode all the time, but you still have that wall that's transparent, that's for you, but other people can't see that wall. So it's like you're giving a little bit to people, but not too much where your vulnerability is taken for granted, but it's a little bit enough to see that, okay, I'm still human, I'm still this person, so I think, perfect.
So walk around with mirror tint on, right? Mirror tint. Like I can see you, but you see yourself, but transparent. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I also think it's very important to get to the space to realize that vulnerability also gives you very beautiful, positive things too. It doesn't just make you feel exposed or open or whatever. Some of the greatest times of my life have been from being completely vulnerable. Financially, they're the same, gotta risk it for the biscuit. That means you gotta open yourself up to an opportunity and take a chance on yourself. Bet on Black, bet on you, bet on yourself. There's a lot of vulnerability in that. Having a baby, I'm a doula. The babies don't come until you submit to the energy of the child coming through. They don't come until you become the adjunct. I was there on the middle one. Can I talk about this? Okay. And her middle child birth, he did not come until she made the decision to let him come.
I want you to, I know you try not to get up, but I definitely want them on Zoom to hear this. Come on. Come on.
Yeah, I'll do this. So, my sister labored all night with this child, water broke, she just roaming around half asleep. And the midwives were talking to me, I'm talking to the midwives. Jian over here like, he gonna come now, I'm finna get up in the tub now. And within 15 minutes, he came. And life is like that. You know, when you choose to be vulnerable about certain situations and, because a lot of times people come up and haven't had the experience of the positivity of being vulnerable, it's automatically, that's a weakness, that's weak, that made me look weak, that made me feel weak. I'm not trying to do that, but You got to be able to open your hand up in order to receive. You have to be open. You have to be naked, figuratively and seriously. You know, a lot of times folks who have issues with body image, who have had trigger warning, rape, molestation, emotional abuse, it's very hard to look at themselves in the mirror naked. But it's not just the physical nakedness. It's hard to see who they are without the other lenses there. And so it makes it very hard for them to be able to be vulnerable in other situations in life, because early on, you find out immediately that vulnerability is weakness, is dangerous, as opposed to it's a way for me to have what's mine, to claim my birthright, you know, to be able to receive and to have that certain level of vulnerability. So I appreciate Sister Jian for having this, so that if you know, young folks can start to lay the foundation for, you know, whatever happened before to this point happened up to this point. Now it's on you, and you have the conscious decision to decide how it is. Use what you learned before to learn how to create proper boundaries, because as she said, it's time and place for vulnerability. There's certain places where you really shouldn't be vulnerable, and there's times where your ass needs to be wide open, right? Wide open, wide open, wide open. Dude, if you have something that you kind of been thinking about wanting to do and it's scaring you to death, even thinking about it makes you anxious, try to do it. Try to do it, because 9 times out of 10, it'll actually probably turn out a lot better than what you expected going in. And if you are still feeling challenged by doing things that you think will excite you or bring you joy, but you're scared of opening yourself up to it, that's when you start to consult the professionals, the counselors. That's when you go back through your old journals and read what was I going through that time, what's happening with me at this time, and just really start to evaluate what's going on in your life, so that you can approach life more openly and more, you know, vulnerably, but still able to protect your peace, still able to protect yourself, but still be able to receive the abundance that's for you. Ashe? Ashe.
Summarizing everything that we basically said in terms of action steps to deconstruct change, we have affirmations, journal, meditation, yoga and exercise, mindfulness, self-care. Self-care includes counseling, it includes leisure activity. Surrounding yourself with love. So places where you can feel vulnerable, or where you can be vulnerable, safe spaces, as well as taking up space, taking risks, because that's vulnerability as well. And so because I'm the mindful hip hop scholar, and of course mindfulness and meditation is on the list, we are going to complete or participate in a guided meditation. It's only about 3 minutes long. You guys can close your eyes or keep your eyes open, okay? Close your eyes or keep your eyes open. And we're gonna listen to a guided meditation.
You are the universe, the galaxy, the cosmos, and everything that inhabits. And so, because you were that, you were capable, you lifted, and you pursued. All of the things that you hate about yourself are your strengths. It's okay to be soft. It's okay to be opinionated. It's okay to be different. And it's so okay to just be. The world needs to receive you. The world needs your smile, your uniqueness, and your essence. So if you and take your space, let your presence be felt, let your voice stand. World needs you, we need you, you need you. And so the world as one body, go breathing.
Okay. When you're ready, you can open your eyes if you close them. What are some of the things that you heard and that may have resonated with you? Yes, ma'am.
Said, go into the world with all of you.
Anyone else? She said, go into the world with all of you. Go into the world with all of you. Take up space. Right. Yes, ma'am.
The world needs you.
The world needs you.
The world needs you and you need.
The world needs you and you need you. Authenticity. Anyone else? I just like go bravely. Go bravely. That means so much. That means to be vulnerable. Yes, ma'am.
To the cosmos is very powerful and important because it's so small and alone. And when you look at the universe, we are really small. When you imagine yourself as a part of that, it's collective. You're as infinite as possibly could ever be.
Right. Yep. It does tell us that we're infinite. Yes. Anyone else? No? All right. Is this something that you all feel like that you can implement and practice? Yes. So you go to you. His name is Landrell. I do too. He has a few albums out. He has a self-care package album that he dropped in 2020 during the pandemic. And it's just an album full of meditation with hip hop beats, but hip hop beats that are more soothing and healing. So that has been our shame and vulnerability lecture with Professor Jones, the honeypot target on the highest of 7 hills. The very first Black History Month masterclass series with the partnership, and I would love for you guys to follow me on social media at It's Jian Jones. That's Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, and then on Facebook it's just Jian Jones.